From the very first moment I saw her standing under the flickering streetlight outside our apartment building, shivering slightly, holding a torn paper bag, pressed against her chest like it was the last piece of stability she had, I knew something was wrong even, though she smiled as if everything was fine. People say life has a way of shifting in an instant, of turning an ordinary moment into something unforgettable, and that night became the moment my heart learned. The difference between a person who is simply passing through your life and someone who is quietly breaking apart right in front of you. What I didn't know then was that a careless joke I made out of kindness and concern would become the very lifeline she'd cling to just 24 hours later, changing both of our lives in ways I could never have predicted. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us how deeply we all need each other sometimes, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps more than you know. Her name was Alina, and she had moved into the building 3 months earlier, with a soft laugh, a warm presence, and a habit of greeting everyone in the hallway as if we were all long-lost friends reunited. I lived one floor above her, a quiet existence built around work, late-night coffee, and a life that had slowly turned colorless without me noticing. She, on the other hand, seemed to bring color into every space she entered, even the elder neighbors in our building, people who rarely looked up from their routines would smile back at her without hesitation. It took me a while to understand that the brightest people often carry the heaviest shadows, and sometimes those shadows hide behind practiced smiles. I first noticed something changing when the laughter that used to spill from her apartment late in the evenings went silent. Then came the mornings when she left without makeup, her eyes red, as if sleep had become a stranger. I told myself it wasn't my place to ask. I told myself that if she wanted help, she would ask for it. But the truth was that we all become experts in pretending, and Alina was no exception. The night everything unfolded, she appeared outside the building holding that torn paper bag like she was afraid it would fall apart the same way her life had. Her sweater was thin against the creeping cold, and her hair, normally tied neatly, was loose and tangled like she had rushed out without thinking. When she saw me, she tried to greet me with that familiar brightness, but it faltered halfway through, replaced by something fragile, something on the edge of breaking. I remember asking if she was okay, and she nodded. Though her chin trembled, she told me things at home had gotten complicated, that she had gotten into a fight with the boyfriend she had moved in with, that he was angry, unpredictable, and that she just needed to clear her head. Fear flickered behind her eyes, and I recognized it instantly, not because I had seen it in someone else before, but because I had once felt it myself years earlier, in a different place, with a different person. Pain recognizes pain, and even the softest people become excellent at hiding their bruises, both the visible and the invisible ones, in an attempt to lighten her mood, and maybe to remind her she wasn't alone. I joked that she could always move in with me if things were that bad. The words came out casually, the way people say things they don't fully expect to be taken seriously. She laughed, or rather tried to, and told me I was kinder than she deserved. I assured her it wasn't a big deal, that neighbors looked out for each other, that she wasn't as alone as she felt. She thanked me and said she would be fine, but her voice didn't match the words. She went back inside, stayed outside a little longer, hoping she would come back out and tell me the truth. She didn't. The next morning, I found her sitting on the steps outside the building just as the sun was rising. Her paper bag was gone, replaced by a small backpack that looked hastily packed. Her shoulders were trembling even though the air was mild. When she lifted her head and saw me, something inside her broke fully, visibly, without disguise. She stood up, walked toward me slowly, and whispered the question I never thought she would ask. Is your offer still good? There was no hesitation in my answer. I didn't know her whole story yet, but I knew enough to see she needed safety more than anything. She needed someone who wouldn't judge her or send her away. I brought her upstairs, gave her a blanket, made her tea, and let her sit on the couch without asking for explanations she wasn't ready to give. Sometimes the best way to help someone is to let them exist without pressure, without questions, and without the demand to be strong. She slept most of that day, curled up like a child, exhausted from battles she had fought alone for far too long. Over time, she told me bits and pieces. Her boyfriend had grown increasingly controlling, monitoring her phone, questioning her every move, isolating her from friends, and belittling her until she believed she deserved the way he treated her. She had been planning to leave but didn't have the money or the courage to walk away. My joke, the one I hadn't thought twice about, became the first hand someone had reached toward her in months. Living together wasn't easy at first. She apologized constantly for taking up space, for breathing too loudly, for being in the kitchen when I walked and her shoulders always tensed when someone knocked. On the door, her body still reacted as though every sound carried danger. I learned how to move gently, how to speak softly, how to make the apartment feel like a place where she could slowly rebuild herself. For weeks she walked, like someone learning how to trust gravity again, afraid the ground would collapse beneath her at any moment. But small changes began to appear. She started humming when she cooked, sound returning to a space that had been achingly quiet. She began organizing little things around the apartment, leaving small touches of warmth everywhere. Flowers on the table, a blanket folded with care, notes reminding me to eat breakfast. She wasn't just healing, she was adding color back into the corners of our lives. The first time she laughed, truly laughed, it startled both of us. It happened when I accidentally spilled coffee on my shirt, and the absurdity of it broke through her shell like sunlight cracking through a stormed-over sky. Her laughter filled the room, and for a moment I saw the version of her she must have been before fear took over her life. That sound became a quiet victory neither of us spoke of, but both carried with us. We settled into a rhythm of existing side by side. I never asked for anything from her, and she slowly began giving parts of herself anyway. She started reading again, painting again, dreaming again. She found a new job. She made friends. She learned what it felt like to choose her own life instead of surviving someone else's control. And through all of this, she remained grateful in a way that humbled me. She often said she owed me everything, but I always felt the opposite. She brought meaning into a life I had been living on autopilot, reminding me of the softness I had let slip away. There were days she struggled, moments when memories surfaced and she froze mid-sentence, or when nightmares shook her awake and she gripped the blanket like she was drowning. But healing isn't a straight line. It's a messy tangle of progress and setbacks, and she faced each moment with quiet bravery. I learned to simply be there, steady, patient, present. Months passed, and one evening she stood on the balcony as the city lights flickered beneath us, the wind gently brushing her hair. She told me she felt safe for the first time in years, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. She said living with me had shown her what it meant to be treated with respect, with kindness, with gentleness. She said she didn't just feel safe in my apartment, she felt safe in my presence, and that was when I realized something too. I had fallen in love with her, slowly and silently, the way tides rise, softly, steadily, without asking permission. But I kept it to myself because her healing mattered more than my feelings. She needed freedom, not pressure. She needed support, not expectation. So I learned to love her quietly, trusting life to unfold the way it was meant to. One morning, nearly a year after she first moved in, she knocked gently on my door while I was reading. When I looked up, she was standing there with her hands clasped, her eyes bright but calm. She told me she wanted to start a new chapter, not because she was running from something, but because she was finally ready to move toward something, toward a life she wanted, a life she chose for herself. She took a breath, gathered courage, and said she wanted that life to include me, not because she needed shelter, but because she wanted companionship, partnership, and love that didn't hurt. Hearing that shattered me in the most beautiful way. In that moment, every struggle, every silent night, every slow step toward healing became worth it. And as I took her hands in mine, I felt the weight of her past lifting, replaced by a future neither of us had imagined. The day I made that simple, careless joke outside the building, she moved in that day out of necessity, but she stayed for love. If this story touched your heart, made you believe in kindness or second chances, please like, comment, and share this video. Your support helps us continue creating emotional stories for you before the ending. I have a special request. Comment below and tell us what part of the story moved you the most. And as for us, our life together grew not from a place of rescue, but from the tender truth that sometimes the most meaningful connections begin with unexpected moments, accidental words, and simple acts of human compassion. She rebuilt her life piece by piece, and I discovered that love, the quiet kind, often arrives when we're too busy trying to fix someone else's brokenness to realize we're repairing ourselves too. In the end, her question, "Is your offer still good?" became the beginning of a journey neither of us were prepared for, but one we now walk hand in hand. Grateful for the night, a joke became a promise, and a promise became a home.